this, an epic quarterfinal that came down to the very last shot between Argentina and Netherlands. It's all smiles for Messi and company. Former U.S. men's national team midfielder Taylor Twellman joining us now. Taylor, what do you make of what you just saw?
Oh, Kevin, honestly, it's the greatest game of this tournament, and I'll make an argument with anyone right now that Netherlands-Argentina, top 5 best games in World Cup history, because you've got the drama in the sense that Netherlands come back, but you've got the last World Cup that everyone is talking about for Lionel Messi, arguably the greatest player ever, who's always lived in the shadow of Maradona, and that pressure that is all over Argentina. You're up 2-0 to then lose that lead and to come back and win it on penalties. You have 17 yellow cards without a red card. And Kevin, honestly, I was thinking about SportsCenter for the non-soccer viewer, and I was actually thinking of you because that tying goal for the Dutch was almost identical to the Philly special in the Super Bowl. Almost an identical play where you catch everybody by surprise. And then for that to be the tying goal, it had everything. And unfortunately for the Dutch, they'll continue to have the label for the greatest nation to never win a World Cup.
That's why you're my favorite soccer analyst on the 6 p.m. SportsCenter, Taylor. Thank you so much. So Argentina wins in a thriller, and you talk about pressure. How about a nightmare finish for the World Cup favorites, Brazil? This is the early quarterfinal match, taking on Croatia. And the biggest save. It's the post. Brazil devastated. Croatia advancing. The 4th team in tournament history to advance after trailing in extra time. Are you kidding me? As they knock out the favorites of the World Cup, and they do it in grand style in Croatia, the first team to do this in this fashion since Sweden did it back in 1994. All right, back here with Taylor. How surprising was this result to you with Brazil being eliminated?
I'm surprised, and that's not to downgrade anything by which Croatia has accomplished. This is going to be the 3rd appearance in the World Cup semifinals since leaving Yugoslavia in the early 1990s. And so don't take this for what it's worth. They went to the final in 2018. However, 117th minute, you're up 1-0 off of arguably the greatest team goal in this entire World Cup. This is inexcusable from Brazil. You were the favorite, you were the deepest team, and this cannot happen. This is the same country that lost in the semifinal 7-1 to Germany. So Kevin, make no mistake about it, this is a huge choke job from Brazil, and Neymar to tie it in that fashion with Pelé and all of those records going down the drain. This is Brazil's tournament to lose, and make no mistake about it, you tip your cap out of respect to Croatia, but Brazil lost the game today. Croatia didn't come back and win that, and that is inexcusable for how much quality they had.
Brazil, by the way, you mentioned, and we talked about the favorite to win the World Cup. All tournament, that distinction now belongs to Messi and Argentina as they survive. Taylor, we appreciate you. Thank you so much. A closer look after one of the craziest days during the World Cup. Here's where things stand. Croatia and Argentina will meet in the semis on Tuesday following the stunning exit from Brazil. Tomorrow, Morocco. How about everybody's fan favorite there, taking on Portugal, as well as France versus England. That will be another epic showdown. We're following a developing story in the NFL. Ravens star Lamar Jackson doubtful for Sunday's game against the Steelers. Tyler Huntley in line to make the 5th start of his career. The Ravens, they hold the tiebreaker over the Bengals in the AFC North right now because of the head-to-head, but they've lost 4 straight to the Steelers. And they've got to win a game like this. We will see how this plays out. NFL senior insider Jeremy Fowler joining us now. So walk us through what you're hearing right now when it comes to the injuries, specifically with Lamar Jackson.
Yeah, Kevin, I was told that Tyler Huntley, the Ravens' backup, has loosely prepared to play about 1 to 2 weeks. That's sort of been the informal plan since Lamar Jackson hurt that knee. It's a PCL sprain, and so at worst, probably 3 weeks. They're thinking by week 16, late season surge, they will have Jackson fully healthy, ready to run around and throw. Could be sooner, but it's looking like Huntley playing this week, very possibly next. And they believe they can win with him. There's no problems there in Baltimore. Trevor Lawrence, the people I'm talking to believe that he will play this week on his toe injury. He's listed as questionable. I'm told that Lawrence has had an edge to him. He wants to play after the way they were embarrassed last week against Detroit. And they know that their playoff hopes are slim right now, so they got to win. So he will probably play, barring any sort of setback, if they just want to be safe with their franchise quarterback. New York, Saquon Barkley, I was told that he is, quote, legitimately 50-50 going into this weekend. Now, he did do drills today in practice, and he's got a neck issue, but he was moving around okay, first in line with the running back drill. So those are all good signs. So most people do expect him to play, but I'm told that he really is a game-time decision. They're probably going to call this sometime early Sunday. And last one, we got Deebo Samuel. He is off the injury report, had the quad issue. Last week was a bit of a close call. They felt like if they could get through last week, they'd be fine. Well, they did. He had no setbacks in the game against the Dolphins, so he is good to go. The bigger question, Kevin, is Nick Bosa, hamstring issue, questionable.
We're going to keep an eye on that because, of course, that defense has been outstanding. And Deebo and Bosa and the Niners, 3.5-point favorites Sunday against the Buccaneers. Jeremy, thank you so much.
Thanks, Kevin.
Much more on SportsCenter around the NFL, specifically that game. A game with major playoff implications featuring Tom Brady versus Brock Purdy. How the Niners rookie impacts their postseason. After NBA star Brittany Griner is once again back on U.S. soil. Griner released yesterday by Russian officials in a prisoner swap after 10 months of detention on drug charges. ABC's Faith Abube is in San Antonio, where Griner's plane landed just hours ago.
Yeah, the WNBA star landed here in San Antonio, Texas earlier this morning, and our understanding is that she was then brought over here to the Brooke Army Medical Center for medical evaluations. The White House official John Kirby says the nurses and doctors here will evaluate Brittany Griner to make sure everything is okay with her health-wise, and that will take some time, and it'll take as much time as it is needed. This is standard protocol for someone like Griner, who spent nearly 10 months imprisoned in Russia. She was arrested earlier this year for illegally carrying hashish oil and vape cartridges at the Moscow airport. After President Biden announced her release this week through a prisoner swap with Russia, we learned that Griner's long journey home was captured in part by Russian state media. We saw video showing the basketball star leaving a penal colony, and then hours later, Griner in a red coat. She was filmed on a tarmac in Abu Dhabi as she was being released into U.S. custody. Her wife and loved ones, of course, relieved that this ordeal is over and now she's home and they can spend some time with her. Her family, though, is asking for some privacy. As for former Marine Paul Whelan, who's being still held in Russia, the Biden administration is adamant that negotiations to secure his release have not stopped. In San Antonio, Texas, Faith Abube, ABC News.
Faith, thank you. So now that Brittany Griner is home, what's next? What are the challenges ahead? There are plenty of cases to use as reference points, and there are well-established resources to help people like Griner who've been held hostage or wrongfully detained. John Barr has more in tonight's SportsCenter report.
Beyond the elation and relief surrounding Brittany Griner's return Thursday to American soil, there's also now the reality of what she faces next: reintegration into her normal life.
She's a human being who has been subjected to something that the vast majority of us will never know.
Jason Rezaian does know all too well what Griner has experienced. In 2014, while working as the Tehran bureau chief for the Washington Post, he and his wife were arrested by Iranian authorities. Rezaian spent 544 days in captivity.
But I will say that I was highly traumatized, that the brain that I walked in with was different than the one I walked out with. You know, I'd been in isolation and not around people for a very long time, so it was hard to get used to that again. Nightmares, lack of sleep, these were all things that kind of were the markers of the first few weeks and months after my release.
Being a prisoner abroad in oftentimes quite abysmal circumstances, you're facing issues like malnutrition from a really poor diet. Oftentimes people come home with massive amounts of weight loss, up to 60 plus pounds.
Liz Frank is executive director of Hostage US, a nonprofit offering support in 45 active cases of former hostages or people like Griner who've been wrongfully detained.
And then, of course, the mental side of things, right? You're every single day you're facing a new stress.
What would your advice be to Brittany Griner?
Take your time. The first thing that people are going to tell you is that, one, your window of time to tell your story is closing quickly. What happened to Brittany Griner is going to be relevant and interesting to people for many decades to come.
Jason Rezaian, who was also released as part of a controversial prisoner exchange, added that it's not fair to Griner to assign blame to her for the way in which she was released in exchange for notorious Russian arms dealer Viktor Bout.
At the end of the day, she's not responsible for how she was released, and I would just hope that people kind of tone it down and let her reintegrate and process this experience as peacefully and privately as possible. I doubt that's going to happen, though.
Still to come on SportsCenter. Just